Former WWE Universal Champion Braun Strowman makes his emphatic return on last night's edition of Monday Night Raw. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrest News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of WWE, and the rumors were indeed true. The rumors of Braun Strowman's WWE return, in fact, were indeed true. Last night on Raw, we saw the return of the former Universal Champion just over a year after he was last released by the company. On the September 5th episode of WWE Monday Night Raw, the Monster Among Men showed up midway through a fatal four-way match to determine the number one contender for the Usos' Undisputed Tag Team Championships, leaving a trail of bodies and laying waste to all 8 men in the match before posing with the fans. Now, during the beatdown, Strowman did his signature sprint around the ring, shoulder tackling Otis through a barricade, power slamming Angelo Dawkins through the announce desk at ringside as well. Now, the segment ended with Strowman beating up a bunch of security members who ran down to the ring to try and end this absolute mayhem and carnage that was going on. It was almost reminiscent of backstage in AEW at this point in time. Now, it must be said, Braun Strowman got what could be described as a mega pop from those in attendance in Kansas City, Missouri. The crowd, the WWE Universe, whatever you want to call them, the fans in attendance at Monday Night Raw absolutely adored Braun Strowman. He got one of the biggest pops of the evening, eliciting chants such as "Welcome back" and "Get these hands." Remember that? Get these hands. The fans were all into Strowman's character 100%. Now, it was difficult to judge, it must be said, it was difficult to judge whether Strowman will be a babyface or a heel character on Raw going forward. I would suspect a babyface purely because that crowd reaction kind of determines where they want to go. And I know whenever anyone makes a return, they're always going to get cheered, but that was a big pop. And as I've said before, you know, how did Braun Strowman get over in the first place? How did Braun Strowman get over in 2016, 2017, 2018 to the point of where people were saying, actually, this guy should be made Universal Champion because he's one of the most popular acts on the roster? He got over by beating the hell out of people, by doing crazy stuff, by just showing up, laying waste to people, beating people in a couple of minutes. It was Goldberg-esque, I suppose, but different to Goldberg in that what really truly set him apart from other people and other dominating big men throughout WWE history was the crazy feats of strength that he'd do, or the crazy stunts that he'd do, whether it's collapsing the ring with the Big Show, or grappling hook and pulling down the Titantron, or tipping over ambulances, or tipping over semi-trucks, or just doing insane stuff. That's really, truly what got Braun Strowman over. Now, as I mentioned, he did play to the crowd at one point, indicating that he probably will be on the babyface side of the roster, I think. Now, as far as his departure from WWE in the first place, the former Universal Champion was released by the Vince McMahon regime on June 2nd, 2021, as part of the company-wide budget cuts last year. Now, discussions about his return, it must be said, it wasn't a huge surprise that he did return last night on Monday Night Raw, because it had been near enough confirmed by several outlets, several sources for the last week or so. The rumors about Strowman's return to WWE really picked up pace early last week. Towards the end of last week, it was confirmed by the likes of PW Insider, Sean Ross Sapp, Fightful Select, that Strowman was indeed going to be in attendance in Kansas City, Missouri, and he was going to be making his return on last night's episode of Monday Night Raw. And as I mentioned, the return, or the discussion about his possible return to the company, really picked up once, of course, Paul Triple H Levesque took charge of talent relations and creative after Vince McMahon's retirement/resignation from WWE back in July. Now, Strowman is just the latest name to make his return to the company under the Triple H regime. Since Triple H assumed his roles within WWE, we've seen the returns of the likes of former NXT superstars Karrion Kross, Scarlett, Dakota Kai, Hit Row, Dexter Lumis, Johnny Gargano. They've all made their returns to the company. Braun Strowman is just the latest name to return, and it must be said, more returns likely are going to be coming in the future, with reports and rumors such as Sasha Banks possibly making her return to the company, Bray Wyatt being linked also with a return under Triple H. Now, when it comes to the future of Braun Strowman within WWE, Strowman appeared in a backstage interview later on in the show to announce he will be live on WWE Friday Night SmackDown on Fox later this week. So indeed, Strowman is back with the WWE, as was largely reported and expected. He looks great. You can't argue with how he looks. I know that Braun Strowman, and Triple H said it in his interview with Ariel Helwani, actually, didn't he? And I think he was right, honestly. He said that Braun Strowman's a polarizing figure, and he has, and I think he's become even more polarizing since his departure from WWE. I think he was slightly polarizing when he was with the company anyway, whether people thought he was, main event level quality, whether he was a good worker, whether he was a good talker, whether he was this, that, and the other, whether he was worth the money that he was originally on. Because remember, and this was really the big part of the crux of his WWE release, is that his contract was coming up in 2019, which really was the perfect time for his contract to come up, because the money that was in WWE in 2019 was astronomical. It was before the pandemic. They just signed these big television deals with USA Network or NBC Universal and Fox as well. They got that big Saudi deal. There was more money at that point. In 2019 also as well, I think the stock price was at a record high for WWE, nearly at $100 per share. The amount of money that was in that company right then was astronomical. And because of that, and because of the threat of AEW at the time, WWE was tying down every single name they could, big or small, to massive contracts, absolutely huge contracts. And Strowman's deal was coming up. He played hardball, he didn't renegotiate, and he didn't re-sign for a really long period of time. He cut it very close, and then I believe it was around this time, actually, around early September time in 2019, with Paul Heyman as the executive director of Monday Night Raw. Braun Strowman signed this massive WWE contract, and by the time the pandemic happened, and by the time that these budget cuts were happening in 2021, suddenly they looked at his contract and went, it's a big contract. He's probably not worth that amount of money. And because of that, they released him. Now, it must be said, it was said at the time that the expectation was that if Braun Strowman was going to go anywhere, it wasn't AEW, it wasn't Impact Wrestling, it was going to be back to WWE, but probably on lesser terms. We don't know what contract he signed. We don't know if it's similar to the deal that he was making before. I would say chances are no, but we'll wait till we hear anything about that, about his contract, about his wages, about his salary. But I think it's the right move for him, and maybe it's irreversible, the damage that WWE did to the Braun Strowman character, particularly in 2018, 2019. As I said before, 2016, 2017, 2018, Braun Strowman really was, and you have to go back in time. Braun Strowman at that point was one of the most over characters on the roster, to the point of when Brock Lesnar was the Universal Champion on Monday Night Raw, people were saying, Braun Strowman, he should get the belt. He should get the belt. He's over. He's super popular. And he got over by WWE actually managing his character well, by beating people, doing these crazy stunts, doing these crazy feats of strength. But what did they do? It didn't fit in their plans at the time to make Strowman Universal Champion, so they just fed him to Brock. They fed him to Brock over and over and over again, and this guy lost to Brock Lesnar, 3 times, 4 times, and because the plan was to build up Brock to get the championship on Roman. That was always the plan, and then obviously when Roman went down with his illness, they could have put the belt back on Braun Strowman then again. They didn't. They didn't do that. They had him lose again to Brock Lesnar, because that's what they keep doing. That's what they kept doing. So when the time came for him to become the Universal Champion, when they needed someone to step in, during the pandemic at WrestleMania 36 against Goldberg, remember that match was meant to be Goldberg versus Roman Reigns, when they needed someone to step in, they gave it to Braun, but by that point the damage was done. He was ice cold. He wasn't over. He wasn't a popular babyface at that period of time. He'd just been the Intercontinental Champion, but he just dropped it to Sami Zayn. He was doing nothing, absolutely nothing. He wasn't even booked for WrestleMania at that point. And the WrestleMania card was like 2 weeks away from actually meant to be happening in Raymond James Stadium. So when the time came for him to be Universal Champion, of course it failed. Of course it flopped. That wasn't actually his fault. The storylines were bad with The Fiend. It was the pandemic. There was nobody inside arenas. It was at the Performance Center. Everything just didn't work out. And WWE criminally mismanaged his character. Can Triple H bring it back for Strowman? I don't know. My feeling is the damage may have already been done, but he can absolutely be a big asset to the WWE roster. So let me know your thoughts on the return of Braun Strowman in the comment section below. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right hand corner, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.